Welcome to the Babies in Business Podcast. Join your hosts, Rachel and Avram Gonzalez, real-life parents and business partners. Each week on Babies in Business, Rachel and Avram create a space for entrepreneurial parents to find their own way. They'll dive into insights on topics like leadership, efficiency, self-awareness, budgeting, and human psychology as they nurture their family and build their business. Here's your hosts, Avram and Rachel.
Welcome back to the Babies in Business Podcast. It's Avram here with my beautiful co-host, Miss Rachel.
Hello.
Hey, we're just sitting here talking about money, one of our favorite conversations. I listened to a podcast from Tim Roberts this past week, the B&I Power of One podcast, and decided that this was a topic worth discussing. And in this podcast, Tim and his co-host talked about how many people in America could not even afford a $500 emergency when it first hits. And you hear a lot of data and statistics about the personal side of finances, but oftentimes we don't hear about what that looks like in business. And I know for a fact that there are many businesses that are robbing Peter to pay Paul, that are in a constant roller coaster. And Rachel especially has some great insight that she's going to share today on how getting our personal finances together helped enhance the business finances and vice versa. It's just the topic that we wanted to explore today.
Yeah.
How excited are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. Yeah. I just think that it's such a good thing to be talking about, that money needs to be talked about more, because sometimes it can be taboo or people have a lot of shame or guilt around it. So there's a lot about money, but there's so many things that can change for a person when we actually have conversations. So kind of to switch gears here, I wanted to talk about something else, because I know for a fact that you've been given pretty bad money advice personally. So I wanted to hear more about that experience and what that did for you.
Well, growing up in a personal development environment, one of the things that was pounded into me over and over was that the solution to all your money problems is just to make more money. Like, why don't you just increase your income rather than quibble over the $5 latte that you're buying every day? You know, why don't you just make more money and focus on that rather than trying to minimize your expenses? And that was also pounded into me through my experience in network marketing. I was one of those guys that got a huge check on stage and was celebrated for how much money that I had made in a single year with their opportunity, and being paraded around for how much money we were making. But the reality is, a lot of the people that were carrying those big checks off the stage, their finances were in shambles. They had to sell more or they were going to die.
Yeah.
And where did that leave me? A couple years later, I was damn near close to filing for bankruptcy, because I had all of these really terrible money mindset ideas, things that I thought, well, this is how rich people work. This is how wealthy people operate with their money. But it couldn't be further from the truth. And I think this thing that Tim Roberts shared on his podcast shares what the common average person is dealing with. And when it comes to creating financial success, you don't want to talk to or entertain what the average common person is doing. And those are the conversations that we're trying to foster more of here on the podcast, but also that we keep in mind here in our household and running our business all the time. The common person that's trying to give you financial advice has no business giving it to you.
It's like the person that isn't a parent, but they have parenting advice. They're like, well, haven't you tried this? And then you ask the question, oh, well, I didn't know you were a parent.
I know
Are
you're
you
a parent.
Oh, no. No, I just thought this is how it would work. Love, hate those kinds of comments, because you're just trying to pull out your hair because you get so much of that as a business owner and as a parent. So it can be frustrating.
Can be. And, when I was close to this bankruptcy is around the time that we met.
Yeah.
And you were somebody that I know grew up not having much money or any money at all.
Yeah.
And yet, of all of your siblings, you seem to have this superpower around saving that ended up translating really well into budgeting. And it's like this dirty word for people, budgeting. They don't want to talk about it or feel like their freedom's getting taken away. I know your perspective is really different, but I want to take us back maybe 6 years, whenever it was that we met. Gosh, it's been a while. Where did we even start? I know there's a moment where things began to shift for us when you entered the
Yeah.
business. Like, let's go into that.
Yeah, we had this time in our life where you had some past expenses that had come knocking at your door, and so we had those things coming up, and so bills coming in to get paid. And we saw all these things due to be paid, and I just, oh my gosh, I think my heart dropped there for a minute. And same with you, I think. We were just, where do we go from here? And for me, it really started with Dave Ramsey's program, just his money mindset and getting people out of debt. And there's, he talks about budgeting, and budgeting really isn't a bad word. It's the ability to spend money and not have to feel guilty about it. So there were a couple of steps that I took to help guide our family to where we are right now, family and business, because they're both very much married together, pun intended.
Well, we just had no clarity in the beginning. That's one thing, right?
Yeah, correct. So zero clarity. So if you asked me back then, how much is your food bill? How much do you spend in food each month? I wouldn't know.
What is it now?
It's $500.
So she knows that. Like an important key.
Correct. Yeah. And then, there are other bills like utilities that kind of go up and down. And our budget actually takes care of that. I think it's set at $300 right now. It could be $250. We had to play with that a little bit to give ourselves a bit of a buffer. So there are things like that, but not to go too much into the details, because we could do a whole podcast about budget, because I really feel strongly about this. Budgeting is truly the way that you get to freedom. You do not get freedom any other way. Like, fitness happens over time. Financial health happens over time. Doing consistent things over time. So what we did, just to give you a couple of things and be really quick about it. So Dave Ramsey has their 4 pillars that they call the 4 walls that you take care of when you are constructing your budget. And that is shelter, food, transportation, and utilities.
So it's a good place to start.
Yes.
When you
such a good place to
understand
start.
what is your monthly overhead. Like, we didn't
And
even
it's
know
just
that.
right? It's just that. So if you cannot afford anything, if you are in debt, if you are struggling with financial stuff, just start there. Start there, create a budget, and then eventually you can get to other things. But like I said, we'll talk about that in another podcast. I really feel strongly about this. But I do want to mention 2 tools that really, really helped me with budgeting. And that was Dave Ramsey's Every Dollar, because it got me in the habit of having every single dollar that we brought into our house belong to a job. So there was a job for every dollar. So that really, really helped my mindset. It really helped us if you're not used to a budget, it really helps you be strict about it and really staying in those limits.
Made it pretty simple too.
It made it so
It made
simple.
it so simple.
So simple, good clarity on both sides. And then what we did as we got more mature in our understanding, and also both you and I are savers, so we really didn't need the extra push to be better at budgeting, and like the extra accountability that app had of don't go over your set amounts. We moved to another paid service called Good Budget. We'll talk again more about that in our later podcast. But those are the 2 tools that really, really helped us with that.
And we moved from every dollar mostly because we found as entrepreneurs, our income, what we draw from the business, can go up and down, even though our basic needs are the same every single month.
Yeah.
This other envelope system, this Good Budget,
Good Budget
allowed us some extra flexibility after we learned some of the basics.
Yeah.
So I know that our journey with personal budgeting started to feed our greater journey with the business. Do you recall a time where things became crystal clear about what was required for us to do in the business to make sure we had enough at home? 'Cause that was a big thing. We didn't know how much should we be paying ourselves, how much is too much.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are paying themselves way too much because they just don't know what's appropriate, or way too little. But we're going to talk about what is the appropriate.
Building a business while raising a family can be tough to juggle for any entrepreneur. Knowing where to focus and how to spend your limited time is critical to your success. That's why Babies in Business has produced and made available a fantastic audio resource for you. It's titled 5 Key Focus Areas to Build a Profitable Business Without Burnout. During this short training, Rachel and Avram peel back the curtain on their secrets to building a business that serves your family, your dreams, and beyond. To download your free copy of the 5 Key Focus Areas, go to babiesandbiz.com/download. Again, that's babiesandbiz.com/download to get your free copy. We hope you enjoy. Now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, so I went on this journey. We went on this journey together of getting our personal finances kind of squared away with a budget. And then it was like the mystery was lifted. There was no more mystery about how this could work for us. And so I was able to feel a little bit more confident in actually looking at the business stuff and seeing how we could get those things to be more efficient. Because I knew that we were not running as efficient as we could. Because at that point, I remember at this point in time that I'm thinking about, that we felt worried about taking out money. We felt like we were stealing from the business. We weren't sure if the business could bear what we needed to sustain our household, even just bare minimum, these 4 walls that we talked about. So I went on this journey, and we were already reading books by Mike McCallowicks, Clockwork, different
Profit First came along.
Profit First came along, and I was really, really daunted. It was a daunting task to think about putting that into action. Gosh, the book kind of makes you look at your finances. It actually makes you look at your finances and find out where you are. And he uses a percentage system. And so I remember the conversation that we had, and it was, I had done the math to find out what we spent as a business, what we had to be spending, so I broke down all of the costs, all of the different things. And I said, Avram, we need to make this much money in our business so that personally we can draw this much, and we are not going to be taking too much out of the business.
Yeah, we had to increase our recurring revenue by like $13,000 or something like that in order to justify the amount of money that we wanted to bring into the household. Not just survival, but what we wanted. And that was a pretty eye-opening experience, because I think before that time, we were just justifying whether we felt like we needed it or not.
Right.
And then we would take it. And then we'd feel weird about it, wondering if we were robbing from the business. I mean, just going through all these emotions.
Well, and then also Profit First makes it clear, a healthy business, these are the percentages that a healthy business functions in.
And should pay its owner.
Yes, and the owner, so his, Mike McCallowicks' biggest, his mission is to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. So he talks about the owner's pay account, and where you need to have X amount for the money that you're making. You need to have X amount of money that you're paying to yourself, because if the most important employee arguably is yourself, if you're not paying yourself, eventually you're going to quit, meaning your business is going to just die because you can't function. So you need to be paying yourself. So what we actually needed to do was actually kind of contrary to the information that you got. Yes, we did need to bring up our income in the business, but we also needed to get more scrappy about how we spent money. We actually had to take our operation expenses from where they were down about 28%, I believe it was.
Well, quick plug, we did a podcast several weeks ago. If you look it up, it's how we dropped our operating expenses 27% using Profit First. So we talk a lot more about Profit First, the book, the system, and that might be a great resource for you to go check out as soon as you finish up this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So there's so many things that it changed in us. We were able to see that we were operating with way too high operating expenses, and that we currently were able to pay ourselves that amount, but our operation expenses were so high. So over I think it was just under 2 years that we were able to get right where we needed to be. So just really exciting things that we went from, you went from near bankruptcy.
That's right.
I came from I would say, extreme poverty. And I always saved my money because I never knew when I'd have money. So that served me really well in being willing to save money and wait for things. And we've just been able to accomplish so much. I think about a time when $500 really would have broken us, both on the business side and the personal side. And that's not the case now.
The financial part of business is just something that people overlook because the first thing you have to do is start generating sales. But the
Yes.
problem is as you make more money, you spend more money. And if you haven't figured out and gotten control over the cost of rendering your service or producing your product, and that's one of their podcasts in itself. We've done, and because of our work with Dave Ramsey and scrutinizing our personal at-home budget, we took that exact same mindset and applied it to the business using Profit First framework. And we got really clear on what was necessary and what was not. Friends, there's a lot of stuff that you're spending money on that you simply don't need to be spending money on. And if somebody sat you down and interviewed you about it, you would not be able to come up with a great reason for why you should hold on to that expense beyond just maybe your pride. Again, you got to go check out that Profit First podcast that we did a couple
Because
months
we
ago.
do talk about that.
We talk about being really attached to your expenses. We'll start wrapping things up here. We have had this experience in the past where we've had clients that were crushing it from a sales perspective, millions of dollars a year in sales that still went belly up because they were just one emergency away from everything falling to pieces because cash flow was an issue. Cash flow was an issue, and it took one small thing to break them.
Yeah.
The business that I'm thinking of is the one that had this partner that committed a huge amount of fraud. Right? And so you think a business that does $4 million a year, what's $150,000? Well, to a $4 million business, well, I'll tell you what it is. That's like a month and a half of payroll.
Right.
Everything starts to fall and cascade after that.
Right. And you look at it, you have a bill due today, but you have jobs tomorrow, and that's really not going to cut it. And you just, you kind of work from behind. So I'm really excited to talk more about budgeting because we will talk a little bit more about and in depth about how to really assess those things. And money is a really vulnerable topic because we have a lot around money, whether it's shame or guilt or pain or, all sorts of things, that money can be a really wonderful tool that can get us where we want to go. And it can be such a mind-blowing experience to actually have it work for you.
Yeah, and it takes time. But it starts somewhere, right? Where
Yeah.
do you think this money journey really begins for somebody who's wanting to make a transformation?
Yeah, I think it starts in so many different things with clarity, though. You've got to have clarity. If we have had many iterations of our budget. We started with the 4 walls, and then we were able to make that our own and then have different envelope systems, like be able to save for this or that, and be able to build up a snowball that can help pay off more debt. Again, that'll be part of the budgeting thing, talking about how do you overcome this? Because the statistic in America, it is staggering. I do not know the number, but it is staggering how many people are in debt and they could not make it the next month if they lost their job. So budgeting can truly, truly alleviate so much stress. So we're going to drop a couple of tools in here where we mentioned a couple of the things that we recommend, the different apps, the different books, things like that.
We'll throw that in the show notes. Make sure to
Yeah.
go check it out.
Yeah, go check that out, and please, like, subscribe, follow us. If you want to hear more about the things that we've suggested and you just love what we're talking about, please tell your friends and help us make this a great podcast.
Hey, we appreciate your support listening in today. If you haven't dropped that 5-star rating on iTunes, we could really use your help. We got some goodies and things coming in we're going to talk about in future podcasts. We want to incentivize you a little bit to leave us that review. I think that's above board, right? Give you a cool gift for leaving some nice words along with your rating on the podcast. I think that's kosher, right?
Yeah.
Hey, anyway, please help us out, get the word to more people, and we look forward to catching you on the next episode.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Babies in Business podcast. Who do you know that would benefit from hearing this episode? Share it with them and post about it on social media. You can find the show notes for this episode, free downloads, and connect with the rest of the community at babiesandbiz.com. We'll see you next time.